Hello, welcome back to another video. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit more on victimhood and how we are always blaming others for our own mistakes, and how we can change things by understanding our own psyche instead of blaming others or uh, making yourselves victims. So, first of all, it's important that we understand that our society idealizes victimhood. We are so prone to this mentality that suffering is somehow good. Suffering is something it is, of course, a very deep experience. If a person is in a depressive state, he is going through a deep experience. Uh, the world is changing him and making him more mature. But we always try to be in this state of victimhood instead of actually understanding what the universe is trying to give us and actually maturing from this depression or from this state of suffering. We are victimizing ourselves and blaming others. Now, it's important to understand who we are idealizing. We usually idealize someone who has worked hard. We idealize someone who has gone through a lot of suffering. And this makes us think that we need to suffer and work hard in order to uh, achieve something, some abstract thing called enlightenment or everlasting bliss, or maybe even godhood, or maybe even hell after. Uh, but we must understand this is something called slave morality. It is not. So if you want to enslave someone, you impose rules upon them. This is how you do it. If you are an employee, or if you have studied just even a little bit about management, you know that in order to make your employees good employees, you have to impose rules and regulations upon them. Now, now while you do this, you are also the person who is imposing in a kind way, or in a way that is more generous, is somehow greater than the person who is imposing in a bad way, right? But those both of them are imposing things on you. They are imposing rules, and when you are breaking these rules, you're either threatened or you are uh, made to feel guilty that you have broken this rule. Now, now there is also another thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is who is ruling the world. The world is ruled by the prophets. Even after they have left the world, they are still the kings. So 30% of the population is Muslims, and 30% of them are Christians, and um, some of them are Hindus, and so on and so on. So the world is not really ruled by the so-called leaders that we have in the politics, and who have studied politics for a while and have become leaders now. It is ruled by these prophets and these avatars. So the Hindus are ruled by Krishna or the Bhagavad Gita. The Muslims are ruled by Muhammad and the Quran. The Christians are ruled by the Bible and Jesus Christ. Now, who are we idealizing here is an important thing. Now, if we idealize someone who has been a victim for a while, now these ideas are based on René Girard's theories on victimhood and the romanticization of victimhood. So if you want to learn more about this, you can go and read his books on mimetic theory and other books. Even Nietzsche talks about this as this something called slave morality. Now, now this is important in spiritual advancement because it is important to understand the mind in this spiritual advancement, and only the mind. The more you understand about the mind, the more spiritually advanced you become. Now, this mentality of victimizing yourself, or mentality of following rules and regulations, is imposed on you by gods. Now, even God imposes some gods, like the Abrahamic religious gods. Even though they say that there's one God, they don't really mean it, because they obviously see that there is a separation here. So as long as there is separation, you have not really understood the oneness of God. So, so the religious people who follow this code of conduct. So the religious people, somehow, when you get into religion, we think that somehow being a victim or suffering can lead us somehow to get this reward after death, or maybe after maybe somewhere in the future. That is why a lot of ascetics leave the world, leave their responsibilities, and go away and make um, self-modify themselves to gain something. This is also another trap. This is the victim ego that is trying to do all these things. Of course, there are yogis who do this. In a very systematic manner, and who actually understand that these are there are systems, but there are a lot of people in the world who think that by suffering or self-modifying themselves, they are somehow moving higher in spiritual advancement. This is absolutely a wrong or false view. This is something that needs to be looked into. Every personality that you have developed needs to be looked into. Every desire needs to be understood very carefully, because there is also a desire to be someone. So there are desires of the physical body, there are desires of the subtle body, and then there are desires of the mental body too. And these desires are to be like someone. These desires uh, are not necessarily the desires of the physical body. Like, for example, overeating can be a desire for the physical body, but the mental desires are equally as important as to be understood than the physical body desires. So the mental desires are the desire to be someone, or be like someone, to to be like someone who owns a BMW, even though you don't even know how to drive a car. To be like someone who is very knowledgeable, or to be like someone who is very intelligent. So this is also a desire that needs to be understood. To be like someone who is more saintly, or who is more calm, and who is more peaceful, even though it is not your nature to be peaceful or calm. You try to be like that person uh, who is peaceful or calm. So this is also another desire that needs to be looked at. Rene Girard talks about this in his mimetic theory, and it is it is necessary that everybody self-educate themselves. And I talk a lot about self-education in this channel, and I talk a lot about writing your own philosophy instead of understanding others' philosophy, or being a slave to other people's desires. So, so now, what happens when you are religious is you are self-modifying yourself in some way or the other, and you want to gain something. You go to the temple in at early morning at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. You but you go with a mentality that you think that somehow God will give you something. You don't go because you actually feel the divinity in the temple. You go because you want to maybe achieve something. Maybe God will take pity on you if you wake up and sacrifice your sleep and go to the temple, right? But this thing, this thing that you're doing, that is, you are suffering in order to gain something, is a huge misconception, even in spirituality. So, of course, there are a lot of self-development books that talk about this thing, but they talk about it in monetary gains. It's equally, it is the same even in spiritual advancement. Uh, you do this subtly. You don't really do this. Some people are not even aware of it. When this victim mentality comes up, you're not even aware of it. Why is this? Why are we not looking into our own minds? Why are we not looking at the fact that we are idolizing victimhood? We are giving power to women these days not because we actually want to give power to women. We are giving them because we think that they have suffered for centuries and centuries. We are not just giving power to women; we are giving power uh, to any person who is suffering, and we just and we are in this mentality that we should also suffer now if we want to gain power, and this is increasing day by day. You can look at the Western media, even though in India it's not that apparent, but eventually this Western thought is going to penetrate into the Eastern thought, because a lot of people here, even in India, are being educated by the Western education system. We have never been taught that we are somehow separate from the mind. We have always been made to become slaves. We have been given rules, and we have been threatened if we don't follow these rules by making us feel guilty somehow, and then telling us that we are going to end up in hell. Now, there have been many philosophers who have been talking about this, and you can read the books, but it is not generally talked about on YouTube, or it is not generally talked about in uh, in podcasts even. Like nowadays, I see that podcasts and books are uh, the basis of information, but we don't really talk about victimhood, and so that is why I'm trying to attempt to make people understand that they are not the mind, that they can understand the patterns of the mind and lead them in that direction which they want. So thank you for watching this video. You can check out my other videos in which I talked about blame and how we subtly blame other people and even God, or even um, other societies. And so I talked uh, deeper about this concept of blame in my another video, and I